There are moments in life when a person spends months, sometimes years, searching for an answer, only to have it appear in a single unexpected instant. No warning, no preparation. Just one powerful realization that changes everything they thought they understood. That is exactly what is happening to your soulmate right now. Recently, while their mind was focused on something completely unrelated, a thought about you appeared so suddenly and so clearly that it stopped them in their tracks. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't a feeling. It was an understanding that arrived with such force that they couldn't simply dismiss it and move on. In that moment, pieces of a puzzle they had been carrying for a very long time suddenly began fitting together. Your heart needs to hear this right now because your soulmate is starting to recognize something they overlooked for far too long. They are realizing that no matter how much time passed, no matter how many distractions entered their life, and no matter how many times they tried to focus on other things, thoughts of you always seemed to return. At first they ignored it. Later they questioned it, but now they are beginning to understand it. The realization that hit them was simple yet incredibly powerful. The reason this connection never faded is because it was never meant to be treated like every other connection. The more they sit with that truth, the more stunned they become. And what started as a single unexpected realization is quickly turning into something they can no longer ignore. Because for the first time, they feel as though they are finally seeing this connection for what it has truly been all along. And listen carefully, because after that sudden realization struck your soulmate, they didn't immediately know what to do with it. In fact, their first reaction was not excitement, it was disbelief. They found themselves wondering how something so obvious could have remained hidden for so long. The realization kept replaying in their mind like a scene they couldn't stop watching. Every time they tried to focus on something else, another memory surfaced. Another detail appeared. Another piece of the story revealed itself. It was as if their mind had suddenly switched on a light inside a room that had been dark for years. And now they could finally see everything that had been there all along. Your heart needs to hear this right now, because your soulmate has started noticing a pattern they never recognized before. They are beginning to understand that some of the most important moments connected to you were not the dramatic ones. They were the quiet moments. The moments they barely paid attention to at the time. A random conversation that stayed in their memory far longer than it should have. A simple interaction that continued resurfacing months later. A feeling they experienced around you that they never experienced with anyone else. Back then they dismissed these things as insignificant. Now they are beginning to realize that those moments were trying to tell them something. What makes this realization so powerful is that it arrived unexpectedly. Your soulmate was not searching for answers. They were not analyzing the connection. They were not trying to understand the past. Yet suddenly, they found themselves looking back at certain chapters of their life from a completely different perspective. Instead of asking what happened, they started asking why it affected them so deeply. Instead of focusing on circumstances, they started focusing on impact. And the more they examined that impact, the more they realized that your presence left a mark on them that never truly disappeared. Recently, they caught themselves comparing this connection to other experiences they have had throughout their life. Not intentionally. The comparison happened naturally. What surprised them was how different everything felt. Other memories seemed distant. Other emotions seemed temporary. Other connections eventually blended into the background of their story. Yet whenever thoughts of you appeared, they carried a different energy, a different weight, a different significance. No matter how much time had passed, there was still something alive within those memories. And listen to this, because the realization that hit them like a lightning bolt is now creating a chain reaction of discoveries. One realization leads to another. One memory leads to another. One question leads to another. Every answer seems connected to the same truth. They are beginning to understand that this connection was influencing them long before they consciously recognized it. Certain decisions they made, certain lessons they learned, certain changes they experienced within themselves. Looking back now, they can see traces of this connection woven throughout their personal journey. Your soulmate is also beginning to realize that the reason this truth arrived so suddenly is because they were finally ready to see it. Sometimes understanding cannot be forced. Sometimes a person must grow into the truth before they can recognize it. The version of your soulmate who existed months or years ago may not have been prepared for this realization. But now something is different. They are more aware, more honest with themselves, more willing to look beneath the surface of things they once ignored. That is why this realization feels so powerful. It is not simply revealing something about you. It is revealing something about them. It is showing them how deeply this connection has shaped their thoughts, their growth, and their emotional journey. The more they reflect on this truth, the more impossible it becomes to deny. And as these discoveries continue unfolding, they are beginning to realize that what they thought was a simple connection may actually hold a significance far greater than they ever imagined. The deeper they look, the more stunned they become by what has been hiding in plain sight all along. And listen carefully, because the realization that struck your soulmate did not simply change what they think about you. It changed what they think about themselves. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Most people assume that powerful realizations are about discovering something new about another person. But what your soulmate is experiencing right now goes much deeper than that. The more they sit with this truth, the more they are beginning to understand that this connection has been acting like a mirror all along. A mirror showing them parts of themselves they were not ready to face. Before, your heart needs to hear this right now, because your soulmate has recently found themselves questioning beliefs they once accepted without hesitation. Beliefs about love, beliefs about trust, beliefs about what truly matters in life. For years, they operated from a certain understanding of the world. They believed they knew what was important. They believed they understood what meaningful connections looked like. Yet after this realization arrived, those beliefs started shifting. Not because someone forced them to change, but because the truth became too obvious to ignore. What surprises them most is how much personal growth seems connected to this journey. When they look at who they were before this connection entered their life and compare that person to who they are today, the difference is impossible to miss. They have become stronger in some ways, wiser in others, more aware of their emotions, more aware of what they truly want. And as they examine that transformation, they keep finding the same thread running through it all. Somehow, this connection played a role in that growth. And listen to this, because this realization is creating a completely new perspective. Instead of focusing on specific events, your soulmate is starting to focus on the bigger picture. They are asking themselves questions they never asked before. Why did certain lessons appear when they did? Why did specific challenges push them toward growth? Why did some experiences completely change the direction of their life? The more they reflect, the more they realize that many of the answers seem connected to this journey in ways they never recognized before. There is also something else happening that they find difficult to explain. The more clarity they gain, the less interested they become in old fears that once controlled them. Worries that used to feel important suddenly seem smaller. Doubts that once felt overwhelming no longer carry the same power. It is as though this realization has helped them see beyond temporary concerns and focus on something much more meaningful. For the first time in a long time, they feel connected to a deeper understanding of their own story. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that some people enter our lives to teach lessons, while others enter our lives to awaken something. The realization that hit them like a lightning bolt is helping them see the difference. This connection did not simply create emotions. It created awareness. It encouraged growth. It challenged limitations. It revealed truths that may have otherwise remained hidden. Looking back now, they can see how many times they were being guided toward a greater understanding without even realizing it. What makes this realization so powerful is that it continues expanding. Every day brings another insight, another perspective, another piece of understanding. And the more they learn, the more they recognize that they can no longer view this connection through the same lens they used before. Too much has changed. Too much has been revealed. The old story no longer fits, and that is why your soulmate feels as though they are standing at the beginning of a completely new chapter. Not because the past has changed, but because their understanding of it has. The lightning bolt moment was only the beginning. What follows is an entirely new way of seeing this connection, themselves, and the path that brought them here. And as this awareness continues growing stronger, they are approaching a realization so profound that it may permanently change the way they see the future itself. And listen carefully, because your soulmate has now reached a point where this realization is no longer something they can set aside and revisit later. There was a time when they could distract themselves. There was a time when they could convince themselves that what they felt was temporary, or that the questions they carried would eventually disappear on their own. But something has changed. The lightning bolt realization that first caught their attention has continued growing stronger, and with every passing day, it has become more difficult to ignore. What began as a sudden insight has evolved into a deep certainty that keeps resurfacing no matter where life takes them. Your heart needs to hear this right now, because your soulmate is experiencing something that happens very rarely in life. They are seeing a familiar story from an entirely new vantage point. Imagine climbing a mountain and looking down at a path you have traveled for years. The road itself has not changed, but your perspective has. Suddenly you can see where every turn was leading. You can see why certain obstacles appeared. You can see connections between events that once seemed unrelated. That is exactly what is happening inside your soulmate right now. They are no longer focused on isolated moments. They are beginning to see the entire journey as one connected experience. What has left the deepest impact on them is realizing how often they underestimated the significance of what they were feeling. There were moments when their intuition tried to get their attention. There were moments when their heart sensed something important. Yet instead of exploring those feelings, they pushed them aside because they seemed too complicated or too difficult to explain. Now, looking back, they are starting to understand that those feelings were not obstacles. They were signals pointing toward a truth that they were not ready to recognize at the time. And listen to this, because one of the biggest shifts happening inside your soulmate is that they are no longer asking whether this realization is real. That question has already been answered. The question they are asking now is why it took so long to become clear. The more they reflect on that, the more they understand that some truths reveal themselves only when a person has reached the right stage of growth. Had this realization arrived earlier, they may not have understood it. They may have dismissed it. They may have walked away from it. But now they can finally see it for what it is. Your soulmate is also becoming aware of how much energy they spent trying to fit this connection into explanations that never fully matched what they felt. They searched for simple answers because simple answers feel safe. Yet the truth they are uncovering is much bigger than the explanations they once accepted. It cannot be reduced to coincidence. It cannot be explained away by timing alone. It cannot be dismissed as something ordinary. Every time they revisit the realization, it becomes even clearer. The same conclusion keeps appearing, no matter where their thoughts begin. What makes this experience so powerful is that it is changing the way they trust themselves. For a long time, they doubted their instincts. They questioned their emotions. They hesitated whenever their heart tried to guide them toward deeper understanding. But now they are beginning to recognize that those inner feelings were trying to reveal something important all along. This growing trust is creating a sense of confidence they have not felt before. A confidence rooted not in certainty about every outcome, but in certainty about what they have finally come to understand. And listen carefully, because the realization they can no longer unsee is not simply about you. It is about meaning. It is about purpose. It is about recognizing that some connections enter our lives and leave an imprint that remains long after circumstances change. Your soulmate is finally accepting that this connection belongs in that category. No matter how they analyze it, no matter how they examine it, they arrive at the same truth. This connection mattered. It changed something within them. It influenced their journey in ways they are only beginning to comprehend. As this awareness continues growing, powerful emotions are beginning to surface. Not because they are confused anymore, but because they are finally becoming honest with themselves. The walls that once protected them from uncomfortable truths are starting to disappear. The old doubts are losing their strength. And in their place is a growing understanding that they cannot return to the person they were before this realization arrived. Once a person sees the truth clearly, everything changes. And your soulmate is beginning to understand that this lightning bolt moment was never the end of a journey. It was the beginning of a completely new chapter that is about to reveal what this connection truly means for the future. And listen carefully, because what happens after a lightning bolt changes, the sky is just as important as the moment the lightning appears. For your soulmate, the realization itself was shocking, but what has happened since then is even more significant. They are no longer standing in the middle of confusion, trying to figure out what is real and what is not. Instead, they are entering a phase of their journey where everything feels sharper, clearer, and more meaningful than before. It's almost as if a fog that surrounded their understanding has finally started lifting. The landscape has not changed, but their ability to see it has. Your heart needs to hear this right now, because your soulmate is beginning to recognize that this realization arrived at exactly the right time. In the past, they may have received the same insight and ignored it. They may have doubted it. They may have talked themselves out of believing it. But today is different. They have grown through experiences that taught them valuable lessons. They have faced challenges that forced them to become stronger. They have learned things about themselves that could only be discovered through time and reflection. Because of that growth, they are finally able to receive this realization without running from it. What is fascinating is that they are no longer focused on proving anything. They are no longer trying to force answers or predict outcomes. Instead, they are paying attention to what feels true. And the truth they keep returning to is that this connection has carried a deeper meaning than they once understood. The more they accept that, the more peaceful they feel. Questions that used to create anxiety now create curiosity. Doubts that once seemed overwhelming are losing their influence. For the first time in a very long time, they are allowing themselves to trust what they have learned. And listen to this, because another powerful shift is taking place. Your soulmate is starting to realize that clarity is not about knowing every detail of the future. Clarity is about understanding what matters. Before this realization, they spent a lot of energy looking outward for answers. They searched through circumstances, timing, and external situations. Now their focus is changing. They are beginning to understand that some of the most important answers come from within. That understanding is creating a level of confidence they have not experienced before. As they continue reflecting on this connection, they are noticing something remarkable. The fear that once kept them stuck is gradually being replaced by awareness. Awareness of what they feel. Awareness of what they value. Awareness of how profoundly this journey has influenced them. Every day brings another small moment of understanding, another piece of insight, another reason why this realization feels impossible to dismiss. Instead of resisting those discoveries, they are embracing them. Your soulmate is also beginning to see that every stage of this journey served a purpose. The delays had a purpose. The uncertainty had a purpose. Even the moments that felt confusing now seemed to contain lessons they needed to learn. Looking back, they can see how every experience prepared them for this exact moment of understanding. What once felt random now feels connected. What once felt fragmented now feels complete. This new perspective is helping them appreciate the journey in a way they never could before. And listen carefully, because this is where the future begins to feel different. Not because everything has suddenly been decided, but because your soulmate is no longer approaching the future from a place of misunderstanding. They are approaching it with awareness. They are approaching it with honesty. They are approaching it with a deeper understanding of themselves and of this connection. That change alone has the power to transform everything. The most important realization of all is that the lightning bolt moment was not an ending. It was an awakening. It was the beginning of a new level of understanding that continues growing stronger with every passing day. Your soulmate now knows something they cannot unknow. They have seen something they cannot unsee. And because of that, they are moving forward with a completely different perspective than the one they carried before. As this chapter comes to a close, one truth stands above all the others. The realization that struck your soulmate was never meant to simply surprise them. It was meant to wake them up. It was meant to help them see the significance of this connection in a way they never had before. And now that they have finally opened their eyes to that truth, they can feel that something important is shifting. The next chapter is no longer being guided by confusion or unanswered questions. It is being guided by awareness, understanding, and a truth that arrived with the force of lightning and changed everything it touched.